Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Well, today we're going to talk about something that really pilots all of us. Everything we do, the decisions that we make, the direction that we go into, we take it to heart, this particular thing. Lots of songs have been written about this one subject. Mariah Carey did a number one song about this. There was a song in the late 70s by somebody named Samantha Sang who teamed up with the Bee Gees about this subject. Many people deal with this, but not really sure how to. I'm talking about emotions. They come into play with everything that we do. We're going to look deeper into that with a guy that helps people along the way in terms of life coaching and also training with his business, which is OptimaLife Practices. And Mike Corral is back with us. Hey, Mike, how are you?
Hey, Steve, how are you doing? I'm doing great over here.
Yeah, real good, real good. I'm glad we're talking about this today. It really is everything. Every decision that we make, even advertisers come up with campaigns to press your emotional button to move you toward making a purchase. Emotions are everything, but sometimes we don't realize that the emotions are really driving us along the way. Basically, in terms of emotions, tell us how that works within our being.
Well, the interesting thing is that we are motivated to either move towards something or to move away from something. Ideally, if we could learn to balance our motivation primarily towards what we want and then use the other end of it away from what we don't want, kind of a gauge to keep them both in balance, then we would be great. We'd be well off. Unfortunately, there are 5 main negative emotions that guide us a lot, that influence us heavily. Those emotions happen to be fear, sadness, hurt, guilt. So fear, I only mentioned 4, but
well, wouldn't it be anger? Would that be another one?
Fear, sadness, anger, sadness, fear, hurt, and guilt. And that's the order that we usually.
I'm just going to jump in. The only reason why that was on my radar was about 6 months ago, I did hypnotherapy. I think it's called timeline therapy. And it's centered.
You did timeline therapy?
About the
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, 5 negative emotions. And
that's right.
We went back on the timeline to the first time that you remember feeling that emotion, be it sadness, the first time you remember feeling anger, first time sadness. And the way it's supposed to work is if you go back to the beginning and figure out when that was, and if you're accurate about it, it's almost like pulling the carpet up. You know, you have the visual of the cartoon character, you pull a carpet and everything that's on the carpet goes flying. Well,
that's right.
All those things along your timeline that have hurt you, made you sad, angry, all kind of go away. Doesn't mean you're not going to feel sadness again. Doesn't mean you're not going to feel anger, but right. That's why it's on my radar.
I'm impressed. I'm impressed that you actually know about that, because I do timeline therapy with clients
I didn't know.
all the time. Yes.
Wow.
The reason why is because we are influenced at a cellular level. Believe it or not, all of the cells in our body have a memory of everything happened to us ancestrally. So the reason why we want to go back in time is because we want to find out what we're dealing with in regarding its origin. So the first time we experienced anger, for example, could have been when we were just before we were in the womb. It could be in the womb. It could be after. So if we, at a subconscious level, if we're able to answer that question, we have a clearer idea of what time frame we're working with in dealing with this negative emotion. And so emotions like anger begin to form what is known as a gestalt. And it's a collection of similar emotions that are triggered by a similar event. So let's just say that when you were being born, your mom experienced a traumatic event that triggered her anger or her fear, and that those emotions will be carried into your cellular framework. So we want to be able to get to that as soon as possible so that we can learn how to deal with it. Because after that, similar events, anger is going to be triggered by similar events on and on.
I
So
love the fact that you said it's cellular, because I don't think many of us realize that that's what's actually going on. Our cells are holding on to it, not just our mind, not just our subconscious, our
right,
being. All of us
right.
are holding on to it. And unless you
Yeah.
eradicate it, you're just going to take it with you, and it's going to affect you like it did, maybe not like it did in the beginning, but it's going to affect you along the way.
Yeah. When we know that we're dealing with it at a cellular level, we can bypass the understanding of it. In other words, we can learn to deal with it cellularly instead of intellectually, because our brain wasn't formed. Our brain was formed later. Our cells began to form before our brain was, and with those cells came all of the memories. So it's not going to be a conscious memory. It's going to be a cellular memory. It's going to be uh, you know, visceral memory, so to speak.
But it's still going to affect you.
It's still going to affect you. Once you know how it got there, you can realign your thought processes and your decision making processes to go with what you know is existing. So you know what you're dealing with. Sometimes our emotions catch us off guard, and we deal with them emotionally, and our decisions aren't that effective when we're making emotional decisions.
How do we know when you work with somebody? How do we know that we've actually gone back to the very first time the emotion was felt?
It's hard to say that we know exactly or precisely that it's the very first time, but what we do know is that it's the one that's outstanding. It's the one that's in our face
Gotcha.
right now, so to speak. And that's important because we want to deal with that. It doesn't mean you can't go back and then deal with other things that emerge, but it's like getting the main issue taken care of first.
Gotcha. Yeah. Thanks for clarifying that, because now it comes clearer. It may not be, let's say, there's a feeling of hurt. It might not be the very first time, but it's the one that really stands out, and stands to reason that that would be the one that would get in the way of life, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Mm.
Yeah. And sometimes we don't identify an emotion like hurt because we hadn't experienced it before. But if at the very first time we knew to identify it as hurt, everything that is similar will also be identified as hurt. So we're better off knowing what it is and how similar it is to the original so that we can learn how to handle it.
With you going back on the timeline, I just want to just focus on that for another 15 seconds. Is it truly hypnotherapy that gets us back there, or if it just is it just a process and a principle?
Um, well, the therapeutic aspect of hypnosis is what gets us past something and into a more healthier state. Hypnosis is the process whereby we learn to relax and yet be fully aware, be fully alert at the same time. When we do that, we can take it apart. We can take the experience apart and put everything where it belongs and get a better understanding of it, which helps us to deal with it in a healthier way. So the hypnotherapy is kind of an adjunct to the experience that allows it to work to be effective. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, totally. Um, can we look at how to circumvent these emotions? Let's say you're dealing with a situation and there's hurt, or there's anger, or there's sadness. Is there even a way? Is that something that we can even talk about? How to get past it, or how to remove it from the situation?
Yes, there is, because things are going to happen to us, and we can't stop things from happening to us, external events from affecting us. But we can decide how we're going to allow them to affect us. We can add meaning to them that is more significant, more appropriate than the meaning that we're taught to have. So, if we begin with the concept, the idea that nothing has any meaning of its own, it only has the meaning that we give to it. So it could be that somebody intentionally tried to hurt us with something, a word or an expression, and adding their meaning to it. Their meaning doesn't necessarily have to be the meaning that we assign to it, and so we can use that as a way of moving past it and making better decisions based on that knowledge and that experience.
So it sounds like it's more about awareness, to be aware of the feeling, the emotion. As you were talking there, I was getting a visual. I've often heard that we are, or we should, give it an identity. Like, all right, I'm feeling sadness. What color is that? Well, that's kind of like a green. Whatever color it is. Yeah. So now you've identified it. It's not just something that's floating around out there in your mind. I've got you there. There's that green. That's come back. That's sadness. I got it.
Yes. And that can be very effective because we could actually put a degree to it. At what level is that green? What intensity is that green? And we can either reduce it or make it worse or whatever. We can also do that with positive experiences as well. The good thing is that when we learn to replace a positive experience or a positive significance or meaning to something, it can help us eliminate the negative one without focusing on the negative one.
Isn't it interesting that we started talking about emotions and right away we went to the negative ones?
We do that.
We do that.
For some reason, we do that.
Yeah.
But it makes sense because when you talk about what we see and everything that we do as a positive experience, it's the negative experience that allows us to see the positive. So when you look at the structure of an atom, you go into the structure of an atom, we wouldn't be able to notice the positive if it weren't for the negative. So it's something that is there. That's something that we learn to deal with, to circumvent, and actually understanding it eliminates the fear of it.
And it makes perfect sense because you can't feel happy unless you feel sad. If we never felt sad, we wouldn't know what happy was.
Right.
Right?
That's right. That's right. So, and that doesn't mean that the negative is the primary, the positive is the primary, but it's accentuated by the negative.
So how about some other thoughts on how to deal with I guess we're focusing on the negative because those are the most challenging ones. How to get through a situation when you're feeling, something, whether it is fear, whether it's hurt, whether it's guilt, even sadness. Is there any other ways that we've talked about identifying what they are? I know what that is now. I gave it a color, gave it an identity, whatever it might be. Are there other ways that we can help ourselves move past when those situations come up?
We can ask ourselves, what would you like to experience instead of this? I feel sad. I feel sad that I have to move out of my house. What would you like to experience instead? Well, I would like to be happy that I have a better place to live, a place that's more appropriate to what I'm doing and that gives me access to everything that I need. Replace it with the exact opposite of what you're experiencing or what your fear is saying or what your sadness is saying.
I'm going to share this with you because it almost sounds like we're in this territory, but I've gotten better at visualizing certain situations that make me feel better. And last night I was having a little tech issue. I have lots of friends. We're all geeks, right? Had a problem with the TV, just streaming and stuff like that. So I haven't talked to him in a while. Got him on the phone. We talked for 2 hours. We just, all geek stuff. There was no, hey, how's the family? It was all geek stuff. But back in the day, we used to build stuff, even like radio equipment and things like that. And when the conversation was just winding down, I was getting a visual of something that we built together. It was actually something radio broadcast related way back in the day. I was like in my 20s. And I went to bed thinking about that because it was a positive moment. It was like, wow, this is cool. We created this, or we
Yeah.
duplicated something that you'd have to spend thousands of dollars on. We built it with our hands and it was fantastic. And as I'm going to sleep, I'm like, that was cool. Yeah. And I'm seeing it. I'm seeing the piece of equipment. I know this is like, completely like totally geekster stuff, but it was cool. And I went to sleep in a very positive frame thinking about it, like that one thing that we built together. That's the last thing I remember before I went to sleep. And it wasn't even part of the conversation. It was just a memory that came back when I was talking with him and we were, geeking out and coming up with a solution for the challenge that I had. But I find my brain being able to take those things, and I'm just sharing this because maybe it helps others that, that to take you back there. It could be sitting on a chair on a beach.
Yes.
It doesn't matter what it is, but being able to efficiently, effectively get back there.
So the more you're able to incorporate other senses in that, we call them submodalities. We call them submodalities, which are the characteristics of that experience. So when you think about that product that you created, when you see it, is it in color or is it in black and white? And you notice these things. How close was it to you visually? Did it seem like it was right up front, or did it seem like it was way in the background? All those things are called submodalities. When we incorporate those with as much distinct emotion and feeling and other senses, was there a smell to it? Was there a texture to it? It helps us to manifest more of that because your body at a cellular level prepares itself for that. And they say nature abhors a vacuum and will fill a vacuum. That's the kind of stuff a vacuum will be filled with, that positivity, that distinct thing that exists, that it can exist again and again. We feel powerful over generating that kind of experience once we know that we've done it at least once. So when you went to bed at that time, you knew that you had already done it, and it was a fulfillment, a sense of fulfillment. And that sense of fulfillment, guess what? That's behind every other manifestation that we generate in our life.
Yeah. Yeah. Just it's almost irrelevant what I was thinking about. It's more about the fulfillment. This was a goal and it was fulfilled. And it was just cool. And that feeling of, yeah, I did it. And we put that together. We did but it could be anything. It could be anything.
It's applicable to anything, really. So if you simply ask yourself in another situation where there is maybe some frustration or something that, anticipation, what would I like to experience right now? Ask yourself what you want and then begin to add detail to it. You're just one step away from the manifestation of it. And sometimes the manifestation, it doesn't have to happen immediately thereafter. It can happen later if we can know that in our mind that, oh yeah, I can totally do that. I ask you, can you build this kind of a radio piece? Oh yeah, I can do that. Okay, so then down the future, let's say we contract, and I say down the future, I'm going to hire you to do this. Okay, it's a done deal. I already know. That confidence is gonna be there, and it doesn't matter when it happens. You've already experienced part of the joy and that fulfillment right now because it is totally possible.
That's exactly what I was thinking, because what it brought me back to, and it's been years since I've had the opportunity to use this to create or make something technical. What I thought was, you know what? When you need to get something done, you can do it. I'm meaning in myself. Like if I need, technically to wire something, this camera, that over there, I just do it myself. I don't even call anybody in. It's like, but it brought me back the memory of you can do it, but you lately haven't had the opportunity. And even last night coming up with a solution, it was like we were going back and forth on what the issue was. with the streaming. And I was like, yeah, oh, yeah, that's that. We got that. All right, cool. But again, applied to anything. Does it sound reasonable, Mike, to if you want to, we just pivoted from emotion to manifesting.
Right.
Uh,
It's all connected.
it's all connected. You know, it is. It is. It's the emotion that you feel when you're manifesting. So is it reasonable to think that you want to manifest this over here? Go back to the emotion that you felt when you manifested and created this over here and apply it to this thing over here that you really are working on right now?
Yes, we do that a lot.
Hmm.
Sometimes if you don't have a memory, a success of a successful event that is related to what you want to do, we can create one. If you don't have a memory, if it doesn't come to the forefront of your mind, you can create one. What would it look like if you were successful at this, and begin to add um, to that experience?
Hmm.
What would people around you be saying about it? How would you feel inside? What part of your body would you feel it in? Would it be in your chest? Would it be, in your head? So when we begin to add all of those things, you can anchor that feeling by maybe touching a certain part of your body and relating it to that experience, and recall it, bring it back into existence when you need it.
Interesting. Yeah, this stuff I thought about, but you just like totally I didn't actively think about it, but you confirmed all of it. So, emotions, question. I found myself in the last couple of years when I'm in a situation, and it could be, I don't want to call it a confrontation, but there's everything's relationship. So whether it's a personal thing, business, whatever, I find myself removing the emotion and just
Mhm.
dealing with the facts,
Yeah.
because the facts are the facts. And if there's a situation that's going on, I'll just say, well, this is what happened. That's what happened. That's what happened. I'm not giving you any emotion here. We're just dealing with the facts. Does that sound reasonable as well to approach things that way?
Yes, it does, because what it helps us to do is put the facts where they belong. Instead of misconstruing things because of our emotional influence, we can look at the facts. Let's say in a relationship, you're talking to somebody who says, well, you don't love me the way I want you to be loved. And you're totally aware of that. Okay, well, I wasn't aware of that. That's a fact. I didn't know
Hmm.
that. Um, Now the next thing is, how do you want to be loved? Well, I I want you to show me you love me by uh, buying me nice things, or by hugging me, or by telling me that you love me, or by going along with me, humoring me if you need to. We all have our way of feeling love from each other. And so once we have an understanding of each other's way, it's like the book, the five love languages. Once we have an understanding of what that means to the person, we can actually put ourselves into that meaning and say, well, if that's what it means to you, well, then I'd be more than glad to do this if that's what it means. It's like learning a language. If 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 this means thank you, like Carol Burnett used to say, hello to all her friends,
Mm-hmm.
that well, then I'll do that so I can do the same thing, because that's the meaning it has for you. Does it mean that to me? Well, not originally, but now it does, because now I have somebody that shares that meaning, and it grows us because we learn to deal with so many different people and their way of interpreting our actions and our communication. That we become more charismatic. We become greater at communication, even
Yeah.
nonverbal communication, because
Yeah.
of that.
Yeah. And you just feel more in touch, not only with the other person, but in touch with yourself, and I guess in touch with your emotions.
Yes,
Hmm.
yes,
Interesting. Boy, I thought this was going to go super deep today, but it didn't.
that's
And it
good.
just seems, very understandable. And it's almost as if we have uh an assignment, a goal, a quest in terms of dealing with our emotions, thinking back to the first time you may have felt them. Um, manifesting the proper emotion, getting yourself back to those positive times there. This is all stuff that you deal with. And the more we talk, the more I learn about you. I didn't know you did, timeline regressions or timeline therapy. Had no idea.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I do
Wow.
that one a lot because the emotions get in the way of a lot of different things in our life.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. And that's why we're talking about it today. How do we find you, Mike? How do we connect?
You can reach me. Oh, let me see. Well, you can reach me at 508-648-0825. That's my office number. Or you can go to OptimaLifePractices.com and reach me that way. Set up a free consultation and we'll talk about whatever it is you need to talk about.
Yeah. I mean, if you're dealing with stuff, dealing with relationships, having challenges, navigating through all of it, emotions are the thread that goes through everything, like clothing. There's a thread. Hold
That's
it all
right.
together. And there it is. Mike, great talking with you. Love having you on here. And Happy New Year, by the way.
Same to you, Steve. Yeah, great talking to you too. It's my pleasure. Absolutely.
Same. And we'll talk soon, okay?
You got it.
Thanks.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.